Call the meeting to order, and the first agenda item is to approve the minutes in the March 19th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? Any changes, any additions?
We will assume what we do, Sandy, is we assume that I will ask for a second. I have to unmute Ted. I will unmute Ted and I will unmute Greg just because they're the first two that I see here.
I will move, but I also have some questions about actions that were taken, so that can come either before or after approval.
Okay,
and I will second.
I have a motion by Crab, second by Frank to approve the minutes. And then what we do is, unless there is an objection, we just assume that it is by unanimous consent, unless there is an objection, and then let me know, raise your hand if you have.
I should just ask, is there any objection?
Yes, that'd be great.
Any objection? Is there any objection? None? Okay. And Ted, so what are your questions about the minutes?
I have two questions. The first question is, could you report on what happened with our action at the last meeting regarding the student member of the committee?
Yes, Ted. So we are working on that. Actually, joining us as an attendee today is Madison Tachert. I might be pronouncing that wrong. Sorry, Madison, if you're listening. And she has been selected by the Associate Students of Madison to be our person. Right now, that slot is filled with Max Presta Giacomo, who the alder for the 8th. So we have to kind of work on figuring out how that person gets added in. So that will be happening. But Madison has joined us tonight. If you have any questions for them, they're here.
Okay, welcome, Madison. And the second question has to do with our discussion about the bus plan and our recommendation for the adoption of a motion which included extending the plan to include a study of the area around the Capitol Square. And has anything happened on that?
Not that I know of, Ted. I have not kept up with BRT. It's been a busy couple of months. It's not something I've kept up with, but I can ask for a future meeting to find out.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I gotta go back to my agenda. Okay, so now, do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
No, we don't. Did you want me to go through the technical statement?
That would be wonderful, Tanya. Thank you. Tanya, you are muted, so we can't hear you. And I knew
I'd do that.
That's okay. Well, before you start, I also have one of our members, Adam Plotkin, cannot find his link, or he was unable to get a link to the meeting. If you could send that to Adam, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yep, Jesse will take care of that.
Thank you.
Welcome to our virtual meeting. We are going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff, members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. The chair, clerk, and technical facilitator are responsible for muting and unmuting committee members. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. During any roll call, all panelists will be unmuted briefly. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak. The name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the board, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. And now it's back to you.
Okay. So are there any disclosures or recusals? None? Okay, we'll move on. And so we have one agenda item with many parts. It's basically the downtown recovery. The first one, the city Madison efforts. I think Matt and Rebecca are going to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. I can start. Megan Blakehorst, who is here as well, and I, along with a team, welcome Adam, I'm glad we found you, had put together a streetery program over a course of basically Memorial Day weekend, I think, Megan. We put together a streetery program to facilitate a way for restaurants to be able to expand their outdoor cafes in order to lessen the impact of the public health statement that and rules that require only a certain percentage of those restaurants to be open and their capacity issues. So we really did this in a few different ways. I attached the whole streetery guidelines to the agenda item. So if you had a chance to look at it, that's great. If you have any particular questions about it, I can share a screen share that as well. But basically, one, it's a citywide program, so it's not just for the downtown. It allows people to repurpose parking lots to a certain extent through a zoning approval. Normally, a conditional use would take to be able to do an outdoor eating area in a parking lot would take quite a bit of long time and approval by several bodies. And this allows that to happen administratively and without any fees. And that turnaround has been really quick. I don't have the latest number. I think there was at least 20 or so, Megan. I don't know if you know that there were more.
So far in the right-of-way, so on streets, sidewalks, and terraces, we've licensed 23 or further expanded or new applications, as well as 3 cafe zones. Well, 2 and 1 to be by the end of this weekend, which means using the parking lanes or streets in a more comprehensive manner. And then from last I heard from zoning, they're at about 23 or 24. And street vending has about 20 in the queue and zoning has about 10.
Excellent. Thank you for that update. So yes, it's allowing parking lots to be used. It allows restaurants to expand their sidewalk cafes on the sidewalk if they can go further than just normally they can only go in the front of their facade or in front of their building. So if they get permission from a next door neighbor, they can make it longer. We're also putting them in, we can put them in the street, in parallel parking spaces, as well as what Megan mentioned, the streeteries, which is kind of the cafe zones, which allows, like South Pinckney is probably the best example because it's up and running right now, where they close off all of that angled parking along the entire 100 block of South Pinckney, and it gives people in the restaurants a lot more room. East Main and West Main are also working on theirs, as well as East Mifflin. So those streets around the square have been working on that. And the latest news is we have been working very hard to figure out a way to allow State Street to have a streetery as well. So through the streetery program, we are able to close State Street from Friday evening after the last bus, the last kind of rush hour bus goes through at 6:35. We can close off State Street, and then that's closed until Monday morning when the first buses need to come about 5:15 in the morning. So that allows State Street, all 6 blocks from the 100 block to the 600 block, to close off. They do have to maintain a 20-foot fire lane in the middle, which doesn't give a lot of extra room, but it allows pedestrians to be in the middle and people to have a little bit more room for physical distancing, and to encourage people to come downtown to go and into the local shops and restaurants as they would like. Lastly, in terms of some of the things that we're doing, I'd like to turn it over to Matt Mikolashevsky, who's here from our economic development, to talk about the downtown recovery resolution that's currently going through the system. Matt, you are unmuted.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Rebecca. Again, I'm Matt Mikolajewski, the Economic Development Director for the city. And as Rebecca mentioned, there's currently a resolution before the Common Council to set up a new downtown recovery program. And you may notice within Legistar that there's two different aspects to this program. There's the ordinance, because of new GASB requirements, we're now required to codify some of these programs in ordinance form. And then there's also a resolution that would amend the city budget to provide the funding for the program. And what I'll do is I'll briefly provide an overview of the proposed program, and then certainly open up to any questions that anyone has. Again, this is an ordinance and a budget amendment that'll be going to the Common Council on July 14th for action. And it sets aside $500,000 to provide grants to both building owners and businesses in the downtown to assist with making repairs to their structure, or to assist with paying the insurance deductible necessary to collect insurance to make repairs on their building. So I'll just provide a brief overview of some of the program requirements. Again, it's open to both tenants and property owners. The business or property must be occupied or owned by a local business or owner. And we're considering a business or building to be locally owned if at least 50% of the owners reside in Dane County, or is controlled by managers, of which at least 50% live in Dane County, or is headquartered and registered in Dane County. So we're using Dane County rather than the city of Madison as the measure of whether or not it is a local business or locally owned building. Eligible expenses are basically anything related to exterior repair of the structure, such as damaged windows, damaged lighting, cleaning the exterior facade for those facades that, for example, were spray painted, the repair and cleaning of interior spaces, fixtures, and furniture that were damaged, as well as some of the costs associated with boarding up the facades. The only thing the program would not cover is damage or theft of inventory, loss of business, payroll, and other related operating expenses of the business. The grants would be up to $25,000 per business location, and it would be the lesser of the cost to complete the repair or the cost of the insurance. So again, some business and building owners will decide to make these repairs on their own. Others would utilize insurance policies that they have, but we would help cover the cost of the deductible, assuming it was under $25,000. The program, basically how we're going to set up the program, we're going to develop what we hope to be a simple application form that will be turned in along with evidence that payment has been made. So again, evidence that either an insurance deductible has been paid or that contractors have been paid. And then we would process the request as a purchase order and issue payment to the business or the building owner. So there would not be a city contract. These individual grants would not go back before the Common Council. City staff would have the discretion to simply, if the appropriate justification for the expenditure of funds was made, we would have the ability to simply process the request. And so again, the next step for this is it will appear before the Common Council for approval on July 14th. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Remember, if you have a question, just raise your hand.
I see Mike. Mike has his hand up. Mike?
Thank you, Sandy. And hi, everybody. It's nice to see you after so long. and so much has happened since we last got together. I want to start out by thanking staff for all of the excellent work they've done to try to assist businesses citywide, but especially downtown through the pandemic and now riot recovery. I do have a couple of things I wanted to ask specifically about the downtown recovery program, or maybe now that I think about it, there are more points of information. So first of all, Matt, thank you for all your work on the program. Secondly, thanks for your explanation now. I did note in the DCC agenda, we only have the Legistar link for the budget amendment, not for the actual ordinance that you articulated moments ago. So you might have lost some of my committee colleagues here when you said you see there's two different legislative items. I only see the budget amendment in our Legistar item for this meeting. Am I missing something? Are they both listed there and I just don't see it?
So they are not. I only knew of the one that I wanted to make sure was attached to the agenda item so that we knew what we were talking about. So I attached that Legistar item. I didn't know there was another Legistar item to attach. So that's something that I can make sure that I send out to everybody afterwards.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rebecca. Yeah, so the ordinance that Matt articulated lays out the program particulars. What you see in this Legistar link for our meeting now is the separate budget amendment as Matt articulated it. We now have to do a two-step process with programs like this because of government accounting rules. So what might be the more interesting of the two items, Rebecca will send us that actually lays out the particulars of the program. The second point of information, and maybe my council colleague Patrick might want to join in this conversation, but I'm actually somewhat pessimistic that the city council will adopt this program, believe it or not. It might be shocking to all of you, but two of our colleagues did vote against the program at the city finance committee meeting a week and a half ago now, I guess it's been. And we need 15 votes under state statute to amend our budget mid-year outside of our budget process. And so we're going to have to figure out, I think, some compromise, some modifications to the program, perhaps, to secure the votes we need to adopt the program. Because as it sits now, I'm sad to report to all of you, I'm not optimistic that we have the votes today to adopt it. So for those of you that might know people that are counting on the money, or some of you perhaps would be eligible for the money contained in this program, don't count on it until after the July 14th city council meeting. Yeah, it's so hard for me to say that, but that's the reality of the situation. I don't know, Patrick, did you want to concur or perhaps disagree with that?
I'm trying to unmute you. Sorry, I accidentally lowered your hand, Patrick. And there we go.
Okay, thanks, Mike, and thanks, Rebecca. Yes, I'm also somewhat pessimistic given that we need 15 votes out of 20. And I just wanted to expand just briefly on what Mike was saying. There is, I think, a lot of concern about, finding this $500,000 in the budget and using it for State Street businesses, whereas there are obviously, millions of dollars of needs related to systemic racism and changing our government education system culture related to such. And I think the people who will oppose it are finding that it doesn't seem to be particularly fair given what's been going on. Whether you agree with that, I don't know, but I understand those concerns. And one thing that I don't know, and since Matt is here, maybe it's helpful to just throw this out there. that email came out from a lot of small businesses along State Street that are owned, I guess, by primarily immigrants, people of color that were referencing, we really don't even know what the bid is, more or less, or we're not part of DMI. We feel kind of cut out, was the implication. So I wondered if there might be, it would complicate the program, but if there could be some sort of set aside for, of the allotment for businesses that are owned by people of color in the same downtown area. I think it would complicate it from staff's perspective, because they need to, first of all, judge who that is, as well as create a priority system, whereas it's very easy the way it's been designed now, because the bills just come in, and I suppose it's first come, first serve, and as soon as the money is gone, then it's gone, and there's no need to rank or anything like that. So it would complicate things, but it might make it more palatable for some of the alders that are opposing it. I don't know. Just a thought.
Mike, I guess you were still talking. You asked Patrick, are you done? You want to continue? Mike?
Does Matt want to respond to that? Is that something that,
what do you think about it?
An idea like that?
I did unmute you, Matt, or you kept to.
Oh, it looks like it's muted.
Okay, there I am. I think that there's probably a couple ways that one could approach that. I mean, one is, we could, have a period of time where we collect applications for reimbursement and don't make any actual distributions of checks right away. We, first, see who submits and kind of give preference to individuals that are entrepreneurs of color. Another approach would be to sort of just, if it looks like we are getting a lot of use of the program, very, in the first couple of weeks, to kind of slow things down a little so that we make sure that we have some money available in the account to work with those businesses. I think though the other, the most impactful thing that we can do isn't so much the setting up of the guidelines such that those businesses would have greater preference, but do a very deliberate effort to specifically go to those business owners and those building owners in the very early stages of the program to make sure that everyone is aware of the program, that we've addressed any language barriers that may exist, so that individuals fully understand what the program is and how to apply. That's probably going to be the best approach, would be just to make sure that we're doing a very deliberate job in terms of directly approaching those business owners. And per that list that was included in that letter, it's pretty easy to do, because the individual that pulled that letter together did an excellent job of identifying who those businesses are.
Thanks, Matt.
Sandy, I'd like to add that we do have one registrant for this agenda item, and that is Tiffany Kenny, and she's available to answer questions. So if any DCC members have questions for Tiffany Kenny, who's the Executive Director of the Madison Central Business District Improvement District, she is available to answer questions on anything we're discussing today.
So, Mike, you gave the floor to Patrick, but do you still have things to add, or otherwise Ted's up next?
Yeah, thank you, Sandy. I do have 3 particular things I wish to talk about the Streetery program. would now be the most appropriate time, or would that be later in the meeting? I don't want to keep Megan and Matt, for example, kind of hostage. I don't know if they're planning on joining us for the entirety of today's meeting, or they were hoping to get on to other work. But so I don't know if now is the time to talk about streetery or not. Obviously, it was explained a quick overview by Rebecca already. Would now be the time or later?
Well, if they're not going to be around, Matt, I have one, I guess, point to make about the grant program for businesses for repairs. If there's an issue about it being palatable, the one thing I noticed that it's also good for all landlords, people, property owners, and we have both very small and very large landowners. And I don't know if it would make a difference if you limited it to businesses that were had a certain what would you call it? Economic, some of the really big landlords like ULI, has millions of dollars worth of, probably billions of dollars worth of property in downtown. Can you limit it to only smaller, like people that are under, own under $1 million worth of property or something? Because I do think that it can end up looking like the government loan program, where people that have a lot of money end up getting more money. Do you understand what I'm saying about that? Is it possible to limit it to just smaller property owners? I don't know if Matt can answer that, or Mike, or.
I mean, I'll kind of take a try at it. I mean, we have to be a little careful about wading into the waters of being too restrictive on who would be excluded from a program. And this isn't true just of this program, but this is true of any program that the city operates. And we've run into this in the past, where, sort of income and financial condition are protected classes within the city. So we can't really, as a city, using city funding, like deliberately exclude, a particular, individual based on their income or perceived income due to their real estate holdings. So my gut tells me that would be a little tricky, but it's something we could look into.
Ted, did you want to speak on this issue or on other larger issues before Mike goes on? You didn't get unmuted.
Sandy, I would agree with your position. I think that I, as a committee member, would urge the city to explore with the city attorney's office and whomever to see if there's any possibilities of establishing some kind of criteria that would focus particularly on the small business that would be at least first priority on the distribution of these funds. My question that I had to start with was partially answered by Mark, and that is, what are the reasons for the pessimistic outlook for the success of this program?
Mike?
Was that question of me, Ted?
Well, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, again, I'm just basing it on kind of reading the tea leaves, if you will. So there's 6 alders that serve on the city finance committee, and 2 of the 6 already publicly voted against the program at the last meeting of that committee. For those that are curious who they were our colleagues, Keith Furman and Rebecca Kimball. I don't want to try to put words in their mouth and articulate their rationale for doing so. I think Patrick did a good job explaining generally the concern. I think there's a general concern by some colleagues that this is too parochial in nature. So I publicly said at that meeting that if an alder wished to amend the program parameters to make it a citywide program, because I'm sure you all know that other areas of the city did experience minor, compared to downtown, much more minor vandalism and looting, for example, at East Town Mall. So that's also a concern that's been raised. The issue of property owners has been an issue, as Matt well knows from that finance committee conversation. He was asked questions about why are we including landlords, property owners in the program. That was a decision that I and Matt made jointly, because the two of us worked on the outlines of the program together several weeks ago now. And I just have had so many conversations with small mom and pop landlords on the street who own only one building. It's been in their family for a while, and in most cases, that I thought they should be eligible if they have any costs, for example, broken glass and doors leading to the apartments above the stores or restaurants. I thought that they should be eligible as well. It might be that, again, in the sake of compromise and the fact that we do need 3/4 of the Common Council to adopt this. And by the way, that's not based on attendance. We need 15 votes, even if there's only 15 colleagues at the meeting on July 14th under the law, that we're going to have to compromise in some way. And it could be at completely excluding property owners if need be. As Matt articulated in his quick overview of the program, we already made the decision from day one to exclude national retailers and property owners. So you have to be local, you have to be in Dane County. So the Walgreens and Urban Outfitters and Under Armours of the world, and by the way, I understand from Under Armour that they are not reopening ever on State Street. They've cleared out their space, or in the process of clearing it out, and are closed permanently. But anyway, the nationals would not be eligible to participate in the program, whether it's an out-of-state landlord, which we don't have that many of on State Street, or an out-of-state owned store or restaurant would not be eligible under the program as introduced. So we're just looking for ways to compromise, Ted, because that's my reason for pessimism. Obviously, Patrick agreed with the pessimism that I just think we're cutting it very close as currently written as to whether or not this will be successful at the next Common Council meeting.
Well, certainly this should be a major issue for the Downtown Coordinating Committee. And I say this simply from the newspaper stories about the potential loss of businesses on State Street and in other areas downtown. We want to do everything we can to support the city effort on this. We've done this in a number of different ways in terms of, in the past, programs such as the storefront remodeling and a variety of different support programs we've had. And this is caused by an unusual circumstance, but it certainly is a concern, it should be a concern for this committee in terms of the future of State Street and the downtown business area.
Agreed. Sandy, I see Patrick has his hand raised. So I won't switch over to Streetery until it's the appropriate time.
Okay.
So.
Hey, Patrick.
Thanks, Sandy. I was just going to add a couple more things quickly. I know of at least one other alder that has told me a no vote is coming, and I anticipate there'll be more, but I haven't done any vote counting or anything like that. And you never know what's going to happen until it actually happens. But I do think it's not looking incredibly positive. I do have a quick question for Matt about, and maybe Mike, you know that too. How is downtown defined in the new ordinance? I didn't see it when it first came out, but I wasn't sure if that had been finessed.
We purposely kept the definition of downtown a little vague. So, there's not a specific geographic boundary. And the reason being that, of course, as soon as you put a boundary, you'll get a request for someone that's on the opposite side of the line. So, realistically, downtown would, probably, at least from my perspective, might continue down into the first few blocks of Lilly Street and East Washington and Johnson Streets to the east. To the west, you're probably talking about, maybe heading down West Wash a little bit and kind of, heading towards Park Street. And then, of course, the lakes are north and south. So it's not a specific definition, but certainly it would not include someone that was located, on the far east or far west sides, and likely wouldn't include someone that's, over on Monroe Street or, that's a little farther out.
I wanted to make sure that places like Pincus McBride and things and that on the east side of downtown were included that has quite a bit of damage. Thanks. And just one other thought on this. I think, we're not going to, I don't think, craft some sort of variation of what's already been submitted in this meeting. But I'm certainly interested in trying to work with Mike and Matt and anyone else that wants to try to find a way to make this more attractive to more alders and yet still helpful to downtown. And that can happen offline. Thanks.
Kathy?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like this version of the downtown recovery program may not go through. And I know we can't, craft another version, but I'm thinking about some meetings that I've been part of that were pretty emotional, and they were a lot of the business owners. We did Zoom meetings with DMI and the BID co-hosting them. Maybe some of you were sitting in on those, but they were business owners who really were saying, we need help. What can we do? So I don't know how this current version was drafted or how much input the business owners had in this recovery program. So it sounds like it's a great idea, but I'm just wondering if it came out of the people that need this the most. And perhaps, like everybody, we're saying that the issue of getting businesses back up and going and being intentional about more inclusiveness are not mutually exclusive things, where we want to all do both, right? So I'm just wondering, is there a way that we can bring in some of the downtown business owners to identify maybe a program that would do both, get some of these businesses some relief, get the downtown opening up more, while at the same time intentionally looking at how can we encourage and promote more inclusion and more cultural diversity and more people of color. And I don't know who that question goes to. Everyone.
Rebecca?
I was trying to unmute Matt.
I mean, I'm happy to Kathy, to provide some initial comments. I mean, I would say that the downtown recovery program that is before you is something that was, of course, set up very quickly, with admittedly not a lot of involvement on the part of business owners and property owners, just because from a timing perspective, a desire to have sort of something that was set up to assist with the initial response of the damage that occurred over the past month. That being said, it is certainly by far not kind of the end of the conversation about recovery. And, that is something that when I say we, myself and my economic development colleagues, you see Megan on the call, and my planning colleagues, Rebecca and Alders and the mayor's office, are having on a regular basis with the Business Improvement District, with DMI, with the Chamber of Commerce. and it's conversations that will be continuing in the months and frankly the years ahead. So I would look at this program as a proposal to do something quickly to address an immediate need, but that it is the start of a much longer dialogue that will be occurring on identifying other programs and policies that may need to be changed or added over the next couple of years.
Okay, thanks. Any more questions or comments about the recovery program before we go back?
Sandy, could I try to respond to Kathy's excellent question as well
Yes.
without being repetitive what Matt's response was? I think you bring up excellent points, Kathy, absolutely. I'll just tell you that yes, to concur in what Matt just articulated, in the rush to try to get this introduced, because we actually took us several days following the first round of rioting to come up with the program and get the buy-in of the mayor and so forth to move forward with this. It honestly was really developed by Matt, and then we had Matt and I, we had like a 90-minute, I want to say, conversation one night where I filled Matt in on literally the dozens and dozens of conversations I've had with State Street merchants and property owners since the first hours of the rioting on May 30th. So admittedly, all that's anecdotal information that I'm compiling in my head here. But I shared with Matt in that long conversation we had that evening when Matt really fleshed out the program in writing, the types of amounts, for example, of insurance deductibles that merchants had shared with me, the types of damages that they have. So, for example, the highest amount of insurance deductible someone has personally shared with me is $25,000. Others have shared with me that the simple act of getting those plywood boards over their windows or broken windows affect the frames, and the frames will need to be replaced around the windows, and how ridiculously expensive the frame repairs or replacement are around the windows. So I could go on, but I won't belabor the point. So that really is kind of was in a vacuum. There was a separate communication that I don't believe we've explained yet to the committee, but certainly I wanted to talk about it and make sure that Rebecca sends it out to us. But there is this group that you probably are all aware of through the media coverage. There's been more than one article in the State Journal about a very detailed 6 or 7 page letter that a large group of confidential State Street area merchants compiled, kind of a list of demands for City Hall. And for those that haven't seen the letter, Rebecca, I would thank you in advance for emailing it to the whole of DCC. And if you don't have a copy of it, I can certainly get you a copy, Rebecca, but you probably have a copy of it. Anyway, those so-called list of demands quite clearly state that they're very appreciative of the proposed downtown recovery program, but it doesn't go far enough. And they further articulate in this letter that it is unfortunate that there are very few African-American owned businesses, if any, on State Street. I know of some that were there in the past, but I'm embarrassed to say that I don't know of any Black-owned businesses on State Street proper as of today. I know of several that have come and gone over the years. I've represented my share of the State Street area, but they specifically asked us in this very detailed letter, this wish list, if you will, or demand letter, to do everything we can to try to encourage more diversity on State Street. The letter that was previously articulated by Matt and perhaps also Rebecca, now I can't remember tonight, was an email that was sent by a CPA who happens to do a lot of the bookkeeping work for small businesses on State Street, especially those that are Asian owned. recent immigrants from Asia that have opened up so many restaurants. We, for years now have had our own version of Chinatown in the Lower State Street area. And she lists for us, her name's Christine, she lists for us, again, several dozen businesses owned by people of color. And I know personally, and I've used this example in the past in other meetings, where I know for a fact, because I have the pleasure of meeting all these folks, because they are instructed that if they're seeking an alcohol license of any sort, they need to speak with the alder of the district. So they reach out to me, and we often have a communication barrier because I'm not smart enough to be bilingual, even with Spanish, let alone Mandarin. And so there often have to get interpreters to communicate our conversations or introductions between myself and them. And that's happened time and time again with me, again, because there are so many recent immigrants that have opened up businesses on State Street. Again, many Asians, immigrants, and many Latinx immigrants as well. So anyway, the area though that's clearly lacking are African Americans in terms of any representation on the street, and they specifically call that out. So anything we can do in that area, I really am open to any and all ideas, including the already introduced downtown recovery program. As some of you already suggested, we try to prioritize people of color. I wish we could have a program that we haven't yet introduced that would prioritize loans for businesses of color in the downtown area to help them with their security deposits, their rents, because Lord knows we have more than our share of vacancies now, and this was even before the May 30th rioting started. And now we're going to have unprecedented number of vacancies with all these businesses that have told us they're not reopening. So it's really going to be a long road to recovery on State Street, one that it's going to take so long to recover from, not the least of which is living with this pandemic. So anything that any of you can think of to help us move forward is greatly appreciated. And that's why I appreciate so much, Sandy, you requesting that DCC start meeting again in the midst of the pandemic.
Let's see. I have one comment on that, Mike, and I couldn't attend the meeting today, but I know that Mary Lane Stollinger, who owns a building on State Street and then ran a business, a number of different businesses over the years, did meet with a group aimed at doing outreach to African American community about things that we can do to make the downtown. Like, it wasn't at the meeting, so I'm not sure. I couldn't go, but the goal was how to make the downtown more welcoming and inviting to our African American community, but particularly the businesses. And one of the things, again, that I know we brought up at many meetings is how do we get, if we could encourage landlords, especially if we're going to have a lot of empty spaces, to do pop-up stores, especially maybe during this up-and-coming holiday season, that would have little or no rent if their space is vacant, to have people have some opportunities to test out businesses, things, kind of those kind of concepts that we could maybe go try to do a little more work on to see if we could actually make that happen. And I think the best thing is to talk to African American business owners in other parts of the city and see what it is they would want to see downtown. What kind of businesses would they go to? Would they want to open in the downtown area?
We have Adam Plotkin, who has his hand raised too.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm sorry I can't have both video and audio. My bandwidth gets too glitchy to have both going at the same time. I apologize for the ignorance of this question, but I'll ask it to Matt. And I only know it from the state side, but is there a way to have either minority preference points or do some sort of set aside so that minority owned businesses have kind of a first draw on the grant program here?
What we've done in the past is, rather than explicitly sort of state that there's preference points, what we've done in the past is we've done a concerted effort to craft programs in such a way and to market programs in such a way that that there's greater benefit among individuals of color. So again, to my point earlier, in this case, we as staff won't have time to go out and personally hand deliver the program guidelines to every single business and property owner on State Street. But what we can do is, make a concerted effort to approach the, I think it's maybe 12 to 24 business and property owners that we know are on State Street that are owned by individuals of color. So, and that's kind of the approach that we've taken with other city programs, is we don't sort of explicitly set aside funding or explicitly set aside bonus points, but we will, double our efforts to make sure that those business owners are aware that support is available.
Okay. Any more comments on this issue, or anybody? I mean, Mike and Pat said they're still working on revisions possible. If you have information you want to pass on to them about things you hear or ideas you might have, we can talk to them each individually about this too. I don't know if it would make a difference to encourage some of the business owners, both minority and other business owners on State Street, to go to you said it was I wrote it down, the July 14th meeting? Is that right? Okay. And to express their support or unsupport of it, I guess, whatever it may be.
I would address this question to the two alders. Would there be any value, any wisdom, any benefit in our committee going on record of supporting that the city consider or explore or move forward the support of helping in any way possible the businesses that were damaged as part of the disturbances on State Street and surrounding areas? This is such a critical issue, and I just feel, sitting here feeling frustrated that we're hearing that there's lack of support for the program, and yet from our role as a coordinating committee, we should be offering our assistance if there would be value in that. So my question to the two alders, is there would there be any benefit in our expressing our concerns and our support for any program the city could offer?
Mike or Pat, do you have a response to that? Or?
Well, thank you, Ted. I would welcome such a motion. I don't see a downside to the DCC going on record supporting the program or a variation of it. We didn't refer the actual legislation to this committee because at the point we were developing it, it wasn't certain that we were for sure going to be meeting tonight. But I have to go back to the agenda. Rebecca, do you see any issues with open meetings law if we entertained a motion to have the committee support the legislation, or more broadly, a program like this? The way you've worded the agenda, it's pretty broad.
I do have the Downtown Recovery Program as listed on our agenda as something that we would talk about tonight. Because it wasn't referred to us, I didn't put, and I included a link to the actual, as you had known, a link to the resolution in our legislative items. So I believe that we are connected enough to that if there was, it would be difficult for then that to go into the full legislative record, but certainly then you or Patrick would be able to mention that the DCC did that at a meeting. So we can make any motion that you want on this subject. It just really can't go into that record. It can go into our record.
Thank you.
Patrick, did you have a comment? Oh, Patrick.
Thanks. I don't see a downside to this either, and it is something that can be referred to. I would recommend perhaps a statement that the committee supports in support of this program, but I think it's okay to add something related to what Kathy was mentioning and others related to, either especially targeting businesses, small businesses owned by people of color, and with an eye towards the future of cultivating businesses owned by people of color in the downtown area. So a slightly broader statement might be helpful. Just a thought. Hard to craft too, though.
Well, I'll go ahead, Kathy.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, just a comment. I don't think we want to support the program as is. I think that's an agreement, and I do think, what Alder Heck just mentioned is really good, and we have to craft that message, but that we are in support of a downtown recovery program. And that program needs a broader, I think, definition and more refinement, right? Everybody said this was quickly put together, but with absolutely understood why. It was just chaos, right? So the incentive is there to do something. I just think it just needs further refinement and maybe a little bit more time. And it absolutely, I think it needs to be both. It needs to be, let's be intentional about business owners, people of color, the diversity, and at the same time, do everything we can to support downtown Madison to get the businesses either reopened or encourage new businesses to fill in some of the now vacant spaces.
Well, I think, boy, I'm glad, Kathy, thank you, because I think we need to make a statement like that. I'm not sure that we're going to come up with something that touches all the bases today. And I'm wondering whether or not there could be some communication with Rebecca and the two alders and Kathy and anyone else that's interested that could draft such a statement of support for the downtown recovery program, focusing on support for the city effort and the small businesses and people of color, et cetera, that could then be distributed via email or however, so that we could have a motion to where the committee could either say yes or no that we support this, and that we could go on the record. I don't know if that's possible within city procedures, but I think it's a really important topic that we should be expressing our concerns to the city.
Ted, I don't believe we can do that per open records. However, if there was a statement of support with a few bullet points, I could try to take those down and read them back to you like I often do during these meetings. And maybe it's a very short statement that notes the things that you have mentioned that you would like to work on. I will let Sandy facilitate that discussion, but I'm taking notes, and when you're ready, I can try to repeat them back.
Kathy, do you have a?
No, I like Rebecca's idea.
Certainly, and Kathy's point that she made in terms of targeting that, such as supporting the city effort, particularly focusing on targeting small businesses and businesses owned by people of color and support diversity, and just reaffirming the role of this committee to be particularly concerned for what is happening downtown, and the revival of State Street and the areas around the square is just so critical to what our purpose is, and we should, in my view, we should be supporting it in any and every way we can. And Rebecca, yes, I know you're good at doing this, so I would encourage you to take a stab at it.
Right now, the things that I have written down that you guys mentioned are supporting the downtown recovery program under the conditions that the program is revised to work with business owners to better understand their needs, to cultivate new businesses owned by people of color with a particular focus on supporting small businesses and existing businesses that are owned by people of color. That's sort of what I have now, but raise your hand if you want to add, or if I did not take that down correctly.
Anybody have anything to add to that? Does that sound like it's something we could vote on like that, or that we support and then leave it up to the council and the alders to figure out how to do that? Yeah.
I would be interested in any other comments that committee members have on this subject.
Mm-hmm. One thing I wonder about, I don't know people's insurance deductibles and how, but I think most people don't have deductibles much more than a couple $1,000s. And I could be wrong, depending on if you own a lot of property, you probably have a large one, but I think most smaller businesses, they probably have a deductible more around $2,000 or something like that. So we're not necessarily thinking that people are going to be getting a whole lot of money. And maybe this is totally out of the ballpark, but if there is money left over, if people don't apply for this, could we also put a caveat in there that that money would go towards doing something to encourage minority businesses? The rest of the money to open downtown, especially in vacant buildings, even if they're only temporary, kind of like I said, pop-up businesses during the holiday season, that will give people a taste of what it's like to be downtown and what it's like to, to do business downtown. I'm not sure if that is a doable thing. And maybe it's foolish to think there would be any money left of the 500,000, but
looks like Greg has his hand raised, so I've unmuted him.
Thank you. I am firmly in belief that we need to pass this small program as part of a really huge project. It's the first tiny step. One thing I will correct is many business owners down there don't have any insurance, and many have very large deductibles so they can keep their insurance rates down. As a business owner downtown of several businesses, I have no interest in applying for this because this should go to the small businesses that don't have any resources. And we need to make sure that that happens. Mm-hmm. We have so many big issues to deal with. This is a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. It's a way to just take baby steps to start moving forward, to give the downtown business and property owners some hope that they can get moving again, that they can reopen. We've got, and I can talk about the 19-point plan that was put out. I think that's a fantastic template to look at for the big ideas. Not all feasible, but a great start. But this has to pass, and I don't know what it's going to take. I know, Mike, you're working hard. Patrick, you're working hard. We got to make sure that we do what's necessary. If it's just a letter of support, that's helpful to make sure that this passes.
Rebecca, could you read the motion that you now have? And I am prepared to make a motion. So if you could read the motion that you've got written down or the notes you've written down.
Sure. So it's not a motion yet, but it potentially is one. So it's to support the downtown recovery program. Now I'm trying to read my own handwriting. Sorry, everybody. To support the downtown recovery program under the conditions that the city works to revise the program to work with business owners to better understand kind of their needs in recovery, to cultivate new businesses downtown owned by people of color, and the program should emphasize or focus on existing small businesses and existing businesses owned by people of color. So it's sort of twofold. There's the kind of working with businesses to better understand their needs and cultivating new businesses in vacant spaces. And then the second part is the program should emphasize small businesses and existing businesses that are owned by people of color. Is that clear enough for everybody? And it's on record with the tape, so I can always go back and read.
I will make that motion, inserting right in the first phrase that the Downtown Coordinating Committee goes on record of strong support for, adding the word strong support for the downtown development program. And then, so I would make that motion.
Do you have a second? Who's still here? Wait a minute.
I've unmuted you, Kathy.
Okay, yeah,
just a second if nobody's seconded it yet.
Oh, okay. So Kathy seconded. Okay. Any more discussion?
The one discussion I would add to Rebecca's comments, I don't think you included that element on saying for existing business and to solicit or to encourage support for new businesses.
I did have that correct, Ted, but yes,
okay.
To cultivate, I used the word cultivate. I think that's what somebody said. New businesses downtown that are owned by people of color.
Okay. And so, wait a minute, Rebecca. So I'm just going to ask, is there anyone opposed to this? No, and then we'll pass it anonymously. Okay. Now, I'm not sure, but Mike, you wanted to go on. You were going to talk about the Sidewalk Cafe program, right?
Yes, thank you, Sandy. I appreciate it. And thank you all for that motion. I think it's going to be very helpful and obviously comprehensive in scope. So thanks for that, everybody. I also want to thank very much the staff that have worked so hard on our so-called streetery program. Megan in particular, but certainly also Rebecca and Matt, among other staff that have worked so hard on this way before the May 30th riots to try to help restaurants and now taverns cope with the pandemic. I can't tell you how meaningful this program is based on conversations I've had with those that are taking part in it or hope to still take part in it. There are still 3 issues that I shared with staff that I still don't have kind of satisfactory answers on, and I'm wondering if I could use this opportunity, Sandy, to mention those 3 areas and see if staff has some good news on them, or perhaps just that they're still works in progress. But these are issues that I've appealed to the mayor's office about, various staff about, and still don't have a closure on. At least that's been reported back to me. So the first one is, as this was already discussed, I appreciate very much that Metro Transit signed off on a plan that would close State Street every weekend to their buses, as well as all motor vehicle traffic, as Rebecca explained to us earlier in the meeting. What I don't understand, and I've had this conversation with the newly minted Metro General Manager and with the mayor's office and with Matt. I've not had the conversation directly with Megan or Rebecca, but is why that State Street weekend closure does not include at this point the top of State Street on the Capitol Square, as we call it, the so-called Y closure. So why couldn't the buses simply detour off the square at Wisconsin Avenue, go to the Outer Ring or Capitol Loop, whatever you want to call it, and proceed down West Wash or wherever the bus happens to be going as part of their detour off of State Street? It would be very meaningful to those restaurants on the 10 block of West Mifflin Street and the 10 block of North Carroll Street that have just suffered unimaginable harm, not only by the pandemic, like all businesses have, but because of the rioting and the aftermath of the rioting. That has been ground zero for protests that have gone on day and night, day after day after day, admittedly peaceful, thank goodness, most of the time, but with megaphones and other AV equipment going and the crowds outside their sidewalk cafes. It's just been very, very painful. And you all know what Cooper's Tavern's gone through from media accounts of late in terms of extortion, etc. So I won't belabor the point. And before I get on to my other 2 points or questions, which I'm sure some of the staff can already anticipate what they are, could somebody just respond to me why we are not also closing those two blocks of the Capitol Square as part of the State Street closure each weekend through the end of August?
I unmuted Megan and Matt if they had anything to add. We were aware of that request. Tiffany Kenny from the BID also requested that it be the Y closure. And I think in our wanting to get it ready for this weekend, could not figure out, kind of come to agreement amongst all agencies that are involved with this to open the Y, but we kind of agreed to talk about it later. We wanted to get this weekend ready. And I think it was that Metro, and I hope I'm not putting any words in Metro's mouth, Metro Transit was concerned that they couldn't close both the square and State Street and still make it work. So with your additional question tonight as staff to the DCC, I will certainly pass that along again to the small working group and to the mayor's office. Actually, Christy Baumel is here, so she's also hearing it and writing it down, I'm sure, as well. So that is your request for moving forward. I think we just didn't have it all. It was difficult enough to get all of us in the room to get State Street ready to go for this weekend. So I think that's something we can talk about in upcoming weekends.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Rebecca. I will state I had this request in like a month ago with Leslie Orantia, obviously one of Christie's colleagues as deputy mayor, who sadly is going to be leaving City Hall soon for bigger and better things. But It just doesn't make any sense to me. And when I had the conversation with the new Metro GM, he's so new, he couldn't articulate why it's a problem to have both closures. And so he couldn't explain to me why it's a problem from a system standpoint. And I just have to keep going back, as many of you in this meeting know, certainly Tiffany and Megan know, and Megan knows as a voting member of the city street use staff commission, that Metro, from my experience, never objected to the wide closure of the 100 block estate and the 10 blocks of West Mifflin and North Carroll. I mean, even the Metro's longtime representative, who's now retired, Katie Sellner, I never heard her object to the wide closure. So that's why this is just so baffling to me. But I won't belabor the point, and I'll move on to my point number 2, unless someone else wanted to add anything from the staff. My second request, and this is where we will have to probably impose on Megan to weigh in. And again, I can't thank you, Megan, enough for all the hard work you're doing on Streetery. Just the volume of emails that I'm copied in on is overwhelming, and I appreciate that I am being copied in on and kept updated on what's going on downtown with that program. But anyway, it's the plea that you've heard, at least indirectly from me, about merchant vending being able to take advantage of that additional space, not of course the fire lane, but as part of the State Street closure beginning this Friday night, allowing any non-food and drink retailers that do have a merchant vending license issued by you to consider having table, closed racks, what have you, into that space right off of the curb. Is there any update on whether or not administratively, and I made this appeal to Matt on Friday night. Thank you again, Matt, for talking to me on a Friday night last Friday. But I made this appeal saying, can't we just do this administratively and avoid the Common Council resolution or ordinance amendment? Is there any update that you could share on merchant vending expansion beyond what's by the ordinance?
Yeah, right now, there is not another mechanism to do it, but we only have 7 licensed merchant vendors right now. And I've only heard from one additional retailer that they're even considering doing something at this moment. And those that already have a license certainly have enough space on the sidewalk that they could expand and work on additional racks and those sorts of things. That the 2 feet in the street that they're allowed, I don't know if it's going to make much of a difference. They could actually get closer to the curb or something like that and still gain 2 extra feet. But I haven't heard from any of the retailers specifically that they actually do need to expand outside of what they already have space for and space around them. I am working on right now, and I've talked with Tiffany to put together like an FAQ to send out to all State Street merchants to give them a better understanding of what the program is and how they can utilize it and what it really means for them within the whole business improvement district in the mall concourse. And I think that we'll start to see people maybe wanting to engage with it once they have a better understanding. I think we just have a little bit of a marketing problem that people don't quite understand what they already have the capacity to do within the current program.
Well, thank you, Megan. I appreciate that. What I'm still confused about is I'm looking as I talk here at the attachment that Rebecca placed in this register item for our meeting tonight, and I'm looking at this, particularly the kind of quick and dirty one-pager that I asked Assistant City Attorney John Strange to organize for us, and I appreciate that you and other staff worked with John Strange to do this. So it's the second attachment and Legistar for my committee colleagues to know what I'm looking at. And at the bottom where it says requirements for retailers, merchants, number 2, all normal merchant vending rules apply. So when I read that, and today wasn't the first day I saw that, John sent me drafts of this one pager. I thought that meant that they cannot, unlike Streetery, unlike food and drink establishments that are again properly licensed and apply to you and so forth, and to the city clerk for alcohol service, that where they, with the permission of their neighbors, can go down the street. For example, if there's vacant storefronts, which again, tragically, there are way too many of today, that they could go next door and expand their merchant vending beyond what the ordinance currently allows. But then when I read that one pager, it says you can't do that. The way I read it, am I misinterpreting what that line means?
No, that is correct, because the original streetery program did not include retail. And so the opening of State Street is under a street occupancy permit, not under a street use permit, and being able to use the street space. So that in order for them to operate, it has to be under the normal rules. But at this moment in time, I'm not sure there's as much of a need to expand into an open storefront. I'm hearing from retailers that they're a little concerned to be outside in the first place. And they're not quite sure just how they can operate, how they can staff it, how they can maintain safety, and all of the things that they're concerned about inside their businesses. And so that's a work in progress. And like I said, an education piece to be able to talk with them about how to use the program to its fullest as it's currently written. And I have not had businesses come to me and ask, I want to go 3 storefronts wide. I have so much stuff. I want to get outside and do all my sales outside. If you're hearing that, or if others are interested in exploring that, I think we can continue to have this conversation and see how we can adapt things going forward.
But you're saying that even if Tiffany or I report to you, and by the way, at the last meeting of the Greater State Street Business Association about 2 weeks ago now, I specifically asked the question of the several dozens of merchants that attended that GSSBA meeting on Zoom. It was the most well-attended GSSBA meeting in years because, you know, the crisis they're all dealing with today. I specifically asked that, and there was an interest. And I know, Rebecca, you said that Tiffany is available to answer questions. I'd ask Tiffany directly if we can bring her into the conversation. Does she believe that we should expand merchant vending, or is it true that, which is tragically true, that yes, people are scared to death about the future of safety on the street, which is why I sent a letter to the police chief and Captain Donahue the other day, begging them for as much visible foot patrol as possible for streetery on State Street this weekend, because I'm worried that we're going to close the street and hardly anybody will want to take advantage of streetery this weekend because they're still scared about what's happened. Look at, again, what's happened to Cooper's Tavern in the last couple of weeks. And they're just one of several businesses that have the same issues with their own safety. So I still think that it's kind of the thought that counts, that even if no one takes advantage of it this Friday because they're still too scared to, doesn't mean that we shouldn't give them the option to do so. So as I said in an email that you were copied in on, Megan and Matt, and I don't remember if you were, Rebecca, but I was asking the city attorney's office to draft legislation for me to introduce and have adopted under suspension of the rules on the 14th of July, if necessary, to expand merchant vending if you all don't feel comfortable doing so administratively because you don't think you have the authority to look the other way, if you will. Could I ask Rebecca and Sandy if Tiffany could join us on this conversation and ask her directly again if she thinks that it's worth doing this, or does she think I'm just wasting my breath asking for it and nobody wants to do it on the street, even if they can feel safe and we have the visible police patrols?
Tiffany, yep, she's here and she can speak. All right.
I'm here. Hi, everybody. So thanks for, looking for some input. Mike, Alder Revere, I appreciate the efforts for streetery on State Street, and I am hopeful that with a little bit more education, more businesses will take us up on this offer. There's a little bit of concern, as you know, about the program just in general. I think there was confusion about if they sign up for it, they have to sign up for like the all, like meaning they would be signing up right now and making some sort of commitment that they would come out every single week to do that. So that's back to some of the education that Megan and I are talking about getting out tomorrow, is just to help clarify some of those basic questions. But I am worried about the number of people who will take us up on the offer for this weekend. I'm not sure that they're feeling very confident as retailers to do so. However, to your point, I think it would be very supportive to show them that we're making every effort to open up economic opportunities for them. So while I'm not positive that I could, we can't guarantee how many would take you up on the offer. It's our goal from the Business Improvement District to work with Megan to make sure everyone knows what the opportunity is and how easy it is to participate. But as you can continue to work with Captain Donahue and others to make the downtown feel safer, I think you'll see more participation.
And can I just ask Tiffany, and thanks for joining us and for weighing in, I appreciate it. And for all you do, of course, every day trying to help downtown recover. But when you say that, you mean not only merchant vending, but also the streetery program as we know it, that you think this weekend we won't have that many restaurants participating on State Street because of the fear factor?
Yeah, I do think that's a concern. The 4th of July weekend is Independence Day. It's always been a pretty busy time downtown. So I would hope that our businesses are busy, but they're fearful. And then one of the challenges that I know they have is staffing and how they decide when and where to bring extra staff in. Their concern would be bringing things outside, adding in additional staff, bringing in all the extra resources that they would need to do that well. Because what I do love about our downtown businesses is that they're hardworking, they are definitely creative, and they make it work. And so they would want it to be good for them also. So I am just, I think the allocation of resources they might need to put in to come out is a little bit troubling for many of them. I spent yesterday talking to about half a dozen of them on the 100 through 300 blocks just to encourage participation in this program.
Yeah, I've had similar conversations. I am concerned that there won't be much participation generally this weekend. But I would just continue to underline what you said, Alder Revere, that the support of the opportunity to do so, and as we continue to see the success that the folks over in the other neighborhoods like King Street are having with it, I think it's important that we keep giving that opportunity, that we open that opportunity as wide as we can, and that, with Megan's help, we do the best job educating people about that opportunity. So when they're ready, just like when they're ready to take their boards down or when they're ready to do something else, they're confident in making that choice because they have a full understanding of the program. Thank you.
One of the things that when I was talking to one of the businesses today, we had already had a conversation with the Vending Oversight Committee about umbrellas and allowing a shade umbrella for staff. And so that is something that we can look into as an overall change within the merchant vending requirements about allowing, something for shade. And I know that some businesses, that was a concern for them for not wanting to participate because they either couldn't have a pop-up tent or shade having it have a similar feel to, say, Maxwell Street Days or something like that. So these are all definitely things we're making note on and looking at how we might be able to become a little more flexible within that to go along with some, addressing some of the needs that we've heard from business owners. And as we continue to hear more, the better responsive we can be to that need without creating something that we think people need, but they actually don't want to participate in or utilize.
Thank you, Megan, and thanks for bringing up the umbrella issue. Just on that point, as you know, the last Vending Oversight Committee meeting before the pandemic, and we haven't, met since the pandemic came to our community. But at that meeting, we heard the pleas from knuckleheads for Americans with Disabilities Act argument that they wanted their employees to have covering from the elements, especially the sun. Is that something that are you saying that now you think maybe you do have the ability administratively to allow umbrellas for merchant vendors? Or are you saying that will require an act of the Common Council?
That will require an ordinance change at the moment. But when it comes to the, health and safety on that piece from the ADA conversation, I have continued that conversation with Knuckleheads, and they are using an umbrella for safety for their staff right now.
Thank you. So then my last point, Sandy, to segue, and Megan kind of already brought it up, and that is the issue of umbrellas, but it wasn't the argument for umbrellas for merchant vending, but as Tiffany well knows, and in conversations that all the staff have been in, including my conversation with Matt last Friday night, we are receiving a number of requests from these restaurants that are so thrilled with streetery, including the very successful ones that are on the other side of the Capitol Square, and where we've been talking about King Street, South Pinckney Street, East Main Street. They're asking for permission so that we, during the pandemic, allow for the use of these umbrellas that they receive for free or no cost from alcohol distributors, namely, to be able to use those umbrellas with commercial graphics on them, commercial logos, which do violate the sign code. And so my request has been similar to what zoning administrator Matt Tucker did administratively as it relates to enforcement of sandwich board ordinance during the pandemic, that we authorize the use of umbrellas within reason that do have a commercial message of some sort on them. And so I had asked staff to please see if that could be done administratively, just like the zoning administrator did so administratively as related to sandwich boards. So I'm wondering if, well, Tiffany certainly could concur that she's heard the same request, so we could ask Tiffany that, but acknowledging that it's not just me that's hearing these requests and Megan that's hearing the requests, could I ask Megan and Matt, is there any movement on that? Have you had any conversation in the last couple of days with Matt Tucker?
Unfortunately, I have not, Alder Revere.
I have, and at this moment, our goal is to get people licensed and approved out. And the umbrellas are not approved, but we are moving forward to get people licensed and out. And if those umbrellas are up, we're going to deal with that at a separate time at a later date.
So you're hearing the same requests, obviously, Megan, but you're saying that Matt Tucker thus far has said, sorry, they're illegal?
We're operating similarly to what we're seeing with portable signs right now.
Oh, okay. So it's not being enforced.
Correct.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you if you just said something.
Oh, I said correct.
Okay, great. Can Tiffany and I communicate that to the businesses?
I think that would be in Matt Tucker's hands to respond to that, because it is a sign. It does sort of wrap into the sign code. I'm continuing to communicate that to businesses as I move forward and as we're working with them, each on an individual basis.
I see. Because I know in all of your emails where you say, in essence, congratulations, you are now approved for streetery, one of your, of course, boilerplate rules is no commercial images on the umbrellas. But so you aren't yet comfortable removing that or amending that rule?
Again, it lands in the sign code, so it's not. I mean, it's sort of one of those things that it's this weird space between, the street vending 9.13 and the sign code. So at this moment, we're just not enforcing it. We're really trying to get people up and operational. We're approving all sorts of things that normally wouldn't be allowed. my communication to them also will want to be that this is for now, and next year we have a whole different situation. So they will need to consider that when they're getting all of this new equipment, that it does need to be approvable next year if they want to continue going forward.
Understood. Yes, I'm not advocating beyond the pandemic as it relates to umbrellas.
It's a pretty big can of worms. So that's why, just having that understanding for the businesses that this is a situation that we're dealing with now and how we're operating, which is not always going to be the same going forward into next year.
Yes, absolutely understood and agreed, Megan. Thank you. Sandy, I see Matt wishes to say something more about this.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of reiterate that point that, I mean, Megan really can't sort of officially say that the rule no longer exists or that the rule's been changed by herself. Similar to kind of looking the other way with some sandwich boards, that the rule hasn't been changed. It's just city staff isn't putting the focus on it. So I think for some of these things, whether it be merchant vending, whether it be, the alcohol on umbrellas, whether it be sandwich boards, I mean, some of it's not going to be so much a matter of officially giving the okay to do it. It's just going to be us not spending time focused on that particular, enforcement action.
Yes, thank you, Matt. Understood. I'll just say that, as some of you know, zoning administrator did put in writing that he was not enforcing the sandwich board ordinance during the pandemic. So I guess I'm looking for, and I'll just circle back to Matt Tucker, is if he likewise would feel comfortable putting in writing that he's not enforcing this on umbrellas that are taking advantage of the streetery program during the lifetime of the streetery program. Since again, he was comfortable putting it in writing, and it's probably on his website now, I don't know. But certainly it's been distributed by him that he's not enforcing the sandwich board ordinance within reason. So anyway, let me just close by saying thank you all so much for, again, your work on this on staff. And I don't want to come across as being ungrateful by making these pointed requests and questions. It's not because I, in any way, shape, or form, I'm not thrilled with all the accommodations you've made to help businesses through this very trying time. So thank you all. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you. I have one question for city staff. I know that the parking fees are changed, that parking in a ramp, the maximum is $5 no matter, is that only on weekends or is that also during the week? And the other part of the question is, if that's correct, if my thinking of that is correct, is there any publicity like signs outside the parking lots or anything? Unfortunately, I mostly ride my bike in the summer, so I haven't looked to see if there's any kind of promotion of that.
I've definitely seen some social media action of people talking about it, but I'm not sure about the actual signage or other things.
Because I don't think that a lot of people probably know that. When I tell people, they're usually pretty surprised. And I don't know what it takes to put the city, the parking usually puts out those signs when there's event parking, if there's any way to have a covering put over them, the slip over it saying, maximum $5 all day or something like that. I think it could be really add a little bit of encouragement, as far as people coming downtown if they knew that.
I can certainly pass along that suggestion to the parking utility, Sandy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And on their website, it does say a $5 maximum per day and first hour free on Saturdays in city-owned parking garages. That was a new official news release on, I'll tell you the date in just a second, May 29th. It looks like that was put out.
So the 1 hour free is only on Saturdays? It's not also on Sunday? It's only Saturday?
That's what this headline says, but I'm just looking at the City of Madison website on there. So if something has changed between now and then, this is what's listed on their website.
I just have to step away because my computer, I got to get my computer plugged because it's running out of juice here. So I got to plug it in. But I'll be in the room so I can hear.
I'll just say, since Rebecca hasn't muted me yet, I'll just weigh in and say that I've had several conversations, Sandy, if you can still hear me, with Sabrina Tolley, our parking manager. And the rationale for not including Sundays in any of this is the reality that, of course, you can park for free at the meters all day on Sunday, as has been the case for decades and decades. Probably as long as we've had meters, Sundays have probably been free. So that was her rationale for not including Sundays in that promotion on Saturdays.
Okay.
And I can also tell you at the last Transportation Commission meeting, there was a presentation done. Sabrina wasn't at the meeting. Bill Putnam's the one that made the presentation. But at the last meeting, which you can find on the Madison City Channel website easily if you want to watch it, or otherwise you can look on the Transportation Commission agenda for their last meeting and pull up the document. There is a reopening kind of recovery plan for the parking utility that does say, for example, when Madison-Dane County Public Health goes to phase 3, that likewise the parking rates will go back more to a sense of normalcy in the garages. So it is $5 currently, 7 days a week maximum in all the garages. Unfortunately, the Buckeye lot is not included in that because those are meters, as we know, and Sabrina says it takes something crazy like a minimum of 6 weeks to change the computer program on those meters in the Buckeye lot. But as it relates to garages, she does have a plan that was approved by the Transportation Commission at their last meeting that does take you from the $5 a day maximum to, I'm probably misspeaking because I don't have it in front of me, I want to say $8 a day maximum before it gradually goes back to normalcy pre-pandemic. But again, I mainly just wanted to explain why she didn't include Sundays. I told her I thought for promotional purposes, it would make sense to include Sundays. And again, she thought, well, since the meters are free and she thinks everybody knows the meters are free on Sundays, that she didn't include it in that Saturday promotion. Mm-hmm. And the Saturday promotion, by the way, would continue for the foreseeable future of the first hour free in all garages on Saturdays.
Yeah, just so they might want to know in the future. Unfortunately, a lot of this free Sunday parking is taken up by the residents that live in the downtown now. You know, as it increases more and more, those spaces are used by them during the days, on the weekends when they're home, because they're not working.
Yes, point well taken.
I'd like to, while we're here, give a shout out to our friends in the parking utility who have really come through on the streetery program as well. And, making it so that there's no meter hood fees and, making the curbside delivery spaces available downtown. And they've been a really important partner. And without the parking utility, we would not have been able to do streetery at all. So I just want to say that as staff. They're not here tonight getting all the accolades from you guys. So I just wanted to mention that. Looking Absolutely. At our agenda, unless there's anything more to kind of talk about the kind of current city efforts, which was the streeteries and the downtown recovery program, I don't know if Matt Miklaszewski wanted to give a very brief update on the economy and culture recovery team before we get to our last part, which is sort of this open discussion. I'm going to unmute Matt since he's still here and ask him to talk a little bit about that economy and culture team.
Sure. Thank you, Rebecca. Be happy to. Just by way of background to everyone regarding some things that are happening internally within city government is we have set up 6 recovery teams that cover various topics of COVID-related recovery. And they're internal staff teams focusing on items such as housing, general government administration, transportation, funding, and one that myself and Rebecca are heavily engaged with is the economy and culture recovery team. And again, this structure was set up prior to some of the protesting and violence that we saw downtown over the past month. And it was really targeted to begin with towards COVID response. But certainly that's been expanded to now include recovery relative to downtown. And really the goal is to have an internal working group of city staff across different city departments that may touch on economic development and cultural arts related items to meet on a regular basis or a meeting on a weekly basis to begin to pull together a work plan for how we believe that we need to proceed in the years ahead on working on recovery. And so what we'll likely be doing in the months ahead is we will be meeting with a variety of different external facing city committees, such as the Economic Development Committee, such as your committee, to share our thoughts on where our priorities should be as city staff for what we think we should be working on, and to share that and get your feedback. So really for this evening, I just wanted to kind of bring to everyone's attention that this has been set up internally to begin working on recovery and begin thinking about recovery. And it is something that we'll want to work with you in the months and really years ahead, because we are, it's been mentioned earlier, but we are talking about a multi-year recovery effort. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
I'd like to add to that too, Matt, that's part of the reason why the next part of this discussion talks about 3 areas of recovery, kind of physical recovery from some of the looting and protest, the violence, and then the COVID-19 recovery. And then lastly is looking at an equitable recovery and thinking about how we can make more downtown welcoming and more equitable. So I think that's why we wanted to have this discussion with you all committee members next, that will help inform us and our economy and culture team in terms of the priorities that we hear from you kind of moving forward as well.
Okay. So I guess we should open it up to that discussion, because we do have to be done by 6:30, so we only have 40 minutes left to talk about a pretty big topic. I do think it's important. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to have this meeting, is to start looking at the larger picture, because this recovery is not going to just be, it's going to be a long time, even, I think nobody really knows, as I talk to business owners downtown, nobody really knows when they'll be open in the same capacity that they were before the virus. And I do think we are looking at a really long time before things are back to normal. And what that's going to look like, I don't know. Greg?
Well, I sound like a broken record probably to Mike and Matt, but the downtown business community and property owners are mad. They're very upset. They don't believe that they've been, their voices have been counted or heard. They believe that leadership has been lacking. They believe that instead of coming to them, they are being told what to do. There needs to be collaboration in order to make this happen. State Street, downtown Madison, it's business oriented. It has to have that business voice. I'll point to the 19-point letter that was sent. Again, not perfect, But what an amazing template put together thoughtfully by just a few business owners. I was not involved with this. This is what can be provided when there's outreach. One of the reasons that the businesses are mad and the property owners are mad is because they don't feel they're being heard. They don't believe they're being listened to in any way, shape, or form. Until that happens, we are going to have a very difficult recovery downtown. And I certainly won't go into my personal situation now, but it's really, really difficult because we felt, and I'm not alone, that we have been left hanging. So we need to understand that it's not a committee thing. Committees are involved, but there has to be outreach. There have to be conversations with our leaders that it's understood that those are private conversations, difficult conversations, that we can all stand together and say, this is what we're doing, instead of being told, this is what we will let you do. There's my soapbox for tonight.
Thank you, Greg. Anybody else?
Please raise your hand, or Ted. Okay, I will.
We can't hear him. Can we have Ted?
I'm sorry. Greg, what is your message to this committee? What are you asking us to do? What do you think we should do? I hear you're saying that downtown business people feel they haven't been heard. Do we have a role in that? And if so, what is it? What are you suggesting?
I struggle with the role of the Downtown Coordinating Committee. I think it can be much more powerful and much better voice than it has been. I don't believe we've been given the power and the authority or the voice. I believe we can be a powerful liaison with the bid, with other organizations downtown, with city staff. But meeting once a month, every couple of months, it's really difficult to get anything done. We don't have any legislation that we deal with specifically. It's always, we're second or third on the list. It's very rare. So I don't know what the answer is. I just don't believe that this voice is as strong and as powerful as it was meant to be. And it frustrates me. I come to the meetings and I wonder, have we made a difference?
Ted?
Certainly we can point to a number of items historically where we have made a difference. And if we aren't doing that at this time, I think one of the things we may need to talk about is what is the role of the committee and what kind of effective voice do we have, and how could we, as a committee, become more effective? What are the things that we need to do? Because our statement of purpose is very clear, and we should be addressing that. And if there are things that need to be said or done, or that items that we can go on record of speaking to the alders and to the council, we need to do that. But we need guidance in terms of what that is. And we then have to come together and make that judgment of, are we ready to do this?
Yeah, I will point just to the recovery plan. We don't have a formal role. We had to do a workaround to have any sort of a statement. That tells me that we're not being involved.
Good point.
Mm-hmm. Are you done, Ted? Kathy is up next. Kathy.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Just so Greg, so well said. And you are, you're so right. We've heard this for years. Everybody knows I'm involved in DMI, and I've listened to the business owners talk about not being heard and the property owners, but I don't understand why the business owners and property owners aren't invited in to some of these, and I don't know that committee's the right thing, but where's the disconnect? I don't know where it is, and I don't know if anybody knows, but it's trying to figure out how do we get business owners to participate in what's needed. We've referenced this a couple times during this conversation. There's a lot of really good people with good intentions that are trying to do the right thing for people, but they're doing it for other people without going to those people and saying, tell us what you need and tell us how we can make it work. It's that public-private partnership that needs to be in place. So I guess what I have is just a question, because yeah, it's a problem. So how do we, as people involved in multiple different organizations, bring these people together so we can begin to plan effectively?
Patrick?
Thanks. And thanks, Greg and Kathy, everybody, for those thoughts. I'm coming at this a little bit as almost an outsider because I've only been an alder for a little more than a year. I've certainly learned a lot in a year. And what I hear is that there are a lot of good efforts going on, and it's not just that it's the BID and the Greater State Street Business Association, it's Common Council, it's city staff, it's in the mayor's office, many of whom have representatives in this meeting right now. But you're kind of saying there's no overarching coordination between all those entities, all potentially doing good things. And that's kind of a structural problem. Who should pull those disparate groups together that all do have things in common? Is it the mayor's office? Should the DMI? I mean, I didn't even mention DMI. I'm frankly a little confused about what all those organizations do because they overlap a lot. I understand different purposes and funding and all those sorts of things, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of speaking as a newbie trying to figure out. I don't think it's anybody's fault. It's just how do we move forward? Is there it's form a new coalition? I don't know, just for the purpose of bringing downtown back, maybe that meets separately from these groups. I don't know, just some off the cuff thoughts.
Ted? Oh, you got it on mute. Ted? Oops.
From the standpoint of DCC, in many respects, we are a reactive agency, a reactive council committee. We rely on the council to ask us for opinions. We rely on staff, whether it be Rebecca or Megan or Matt or whomever. We rely on Tiffany and representing the BID. We rely on these people coming at us and say, here's a problem and we need your help. Here's a proposal. We need your counsel and advice. And that is our role. And one of the things we can do is continue to press, again, Rebecca and whether Megan or the police department or Tiffany to identify areas that we can focus on. And then we have to pick up the ball and decide, yes, this is something we need to be involved in and be involved with. And we have done that historically. And we need to renew that effort to reach out to staff and to Tiffany and to the council, frankly, to the two alders, to make sure that we are involved in discussions where it is appropriate. and then we have to respond accordingly.
Kathy, did you mean for your hand to still be up, or did I just forget to lower it?
Oh, no, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I forgot to lower it, but I do have a comment as long as you can hear me. It seems to me that just as every single business has to change and reinvent or repurpose or figure out how to go forward, maybe it's time to look at this committee as well. You know, we've been doing things, and I'm fairly new to it, like just a year or so. The way it's always worked and who's been representative has been one way, but given where we're at today, knowing where we want to be in several years, knowing it's going to be a multi-year plan, maybe it's time to take a look at the composition of this committee and say, you know, are the right people at the table? Does this become more business focused? If we're talking about physical recovery, COVID-19 recovery, and equitable, that's your three priorities within the city. How can we align our businesses with what the city's doing? So just a comment, and then I can put my hand down.
Okay, I think Greg, you're.
I just wanted to say, Patrick, I thought your comments were right on. The last few weeks, I have gone to so many different discussions with so many different types of people, be it property owners, business owners, small business owners. They're all relatively the same meeting. So why can't we figure out a way to bring that coalition, as you say, together to create really great change? Because there is a lot of private money ready to come in. There are wonderful ideas coming from the city. There are needs to potentially create a TID to work in a really unique way to bring back the city. But those conversations need to happen in order for something to make sense. And the business community has to have a role in that. The city has to have a role in that. And of course, the community at large does as well, because we have to always remember equity is key at this point and very important. So we have to have a lot of different people at the table. And it has to be coordinated.
Thank you, Greg. Alder. I can't hear it.
Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to join this conversation late. But I'm a person of color. First of all, I want to make sure I identify that. But we're all in a situation where we are waiting for permission to act. We are in a crisis situation, and we must acknowledge that. And being in a crisis situation, and I do honor what Greg Frank said, is that, you know, what is our position and how are we stepping up? There seems to be a fear of defining or articulating what we stand. Downtown Madison is the focus point and the energy that thrives our economic growth in that community. Absolutely, we're looking at economic development. We're looking at racial equity. We're looking at all of those. But being able to stand collaboratively and say, in order to reimagine what our downtown area will become, it is imperative that we step up. And stepping up, there are risks involved in that. But it is critically important for us to collaboratively say where we stand in support. Is that an easy ask? No, it's not easy. Will there be challenges? Yes, there will be challenges. Will there be people who will misinterpret our intentions? Yes, there will. But in order to reimagine what the heart of the center of Madison will become, is that we must take those risks. And so as a Black alder coming into this discussion, we are very clear that the center of Madison is the State Street development. Can we combine economic development? Can we combine diversity? We can combine all of that, but we must take a risk, and making a statement is what we're standing for and what we're not standing for. And whatever the fears that keeps this body from moving forward, I understand that there have been many conversations on, but most of the conversations are the same, is that the downtown area of State Street must be a vital focus of where we're moving forward. And for this body to challenge alders, to challenge the city in a way that says that we are viable and we are important. My district is the far west side, but I absolutely understand the vitality of the center of Madison. We don't want boarded up businesses. We don't want all of that. And so the risk is, how do we stand together and make a statement of clarity? No one wants to challenge and say that reinvestment, redevelopment, all of that is necessary. We acknowledge racial equity, we acknowledge that, but we must be bold enough to stand and say what's so and what's not so. So I challenge this body to collaboratively come together and make a statement in terms of recognizing racial equity and what got us to that point, but absolutely talk about what is it that we want the future to look like, and be able to stand and say that and show the community that we are involved in the future of what Madison will look like. I love Madison, the reasons I won't even go into, but I have a love for Madison, and all of you who are on this Zoom have a love for Madison. But what it requires is to say, what is the Madison that we want to see in the future, and be bold enough to declare that, regardless of what the consequences are. It is time for us to stand and declare what we stand for. And so that's just my addition to this conversation, being a far west sider, but the heart of Madison and the love of the city burns deeply in my heart, as it does with all of you that's on this Zoom. And so are we bold enough to stand in solidarity and say what is so and what's not so? And so that's what I would challenge this body to look at in terms of how we move forward. Until we're able to do that, these are difficult conversations, challenging conversations. I'm not saying that they're not, but we really must stand and say what we stand for and what we envision of what the Madison needs to be. So that's my comment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a comment to that. When we were discussing the recovery loan program, the one thing that I was really struck by, and I'm not part of the city budget but it seemed to me, why are we just looking at helping the businesses are there? We're going to have a whole lot of vacant storefronts, and being bold, why don't we think about having an economic recovery to try to get those storefronts filled with minority-owned businesses? And how can we do that? How can we get money set aside for that? I know Greg mentioned a possible tip. And how can we do what can we do to encourage that and reach out to people and say, we want to create a downtown that's more than diverse than it's been. And how can we use this point in time to make that happen? And I don't have any answers, but I think it is an opportunity. It's not just, paint over the scratches on your car. It's like, how can we create a new car kind of, So anybody else have, the other thing since it was brought up by a couple of speakers, one of the things I think we have to really look at is how you get business owners to come to meetings or get their input when a lot of small business owners do work really long hours. The whole restaurant industry, we have our meetings in the evening, is working. They cannot be here to have input at those times. A lot of retailers are open till 7, 8 at night. It is an issue of thinking about how can we do different kinds of meetings, maybe not just different times, but maybe trying to do some, even after recovery, trying to do some more things like Zoom meetings that might make it easier for people to get their voices heard, that won't maybe be able to leave their store or their restaurant for a meeting, but could log on take 15 minutes out of their day and log on and give some feedback. And I think it's maybe something to think about in the future, that, using Zoom might be a way to get more participation, because I do know it is really hard for people to do, So any more discussion?
Looks like we have a hand raised with Ted, and then Greg after that.
One thing we might do, and this is responding to the alder's comment, one thing we might do would be to make a specific point of reviewing what our stated purpose is and seeing if it's time to change that to be more responsive in a different way, and to, if nothing else, at least to reassess what our role is and how we can be most effective.
Okay, Ted. Greg?
Yeah, and just to go on with your point, Sandy, I think, one of the neat things that's come out of this pandemic is we're realizing there are different ways of communicating and engaging. And I think that's fantastic. I will say that a point was brought up. People say they don't know what the bid is. Well, we've been doing outreach since I've been a member of the bid and on the board and the chair for over 10 years, and trying to get people to understand what the bid is and does for them, and why they should be active. It's very difficult. And when there are language challenges and others, it makes it even more difficult. And then there's people who don't understand that bid and DMI are separate. They don't understand that mall maintenance is separate from any of the three. So education is very difficult. But if we can figure out a way to engage people in unique ways, we can change that, and then we can all work together on the issues. So I really liked your suggestion. How do we engage people who otherwise aren't able to attend?
Mm-hmm. And maybe one of our we could have a homework assignment, kind of looking at what Ted said, and maybe for our next meeting, come up with a new statement of purpose or things that we think we would really like to focus on, because things have changed pretty radically in the last couple of months. And I think it would be a good time to look at that,
We have two more hand raises. First, Alder Harrington McKinney, and then Alder Verveer.
Thank you. And I wanted to just make a comment before Alder Revere comes on board. The fact that the Alder said that he had been in contact with so many of the business owners in the area that we're talking about. And we expect for individuals to come to us, to find it within their schedule, to come and come to a Zoom meeting or come to a city council meeting. But we are reimagining a different way of communicating. Why is it that we cannot form an outreach that will go to where the people are in their spaces? I know that we will be responsible in terms of social distancing and to wear our mask, but there is an expectation is that they come to us. And in the climate that we're in now, business owners are striving just to survive. And to say I can put on my calendar Tuesday at 4:00 to come into a Zoom meeting may not be what they are able to do, even though they know that they should. And so maybe part of the consideration is that how can we take the businesses in the area that we're defined, divide them up. And so for us to have that conversation and being in their space is what's missing for you. What are the challenges that keep you up at night? What do you see the future in? What your role will be? In their space, you'll get a sense of authenticity that you may not get in a Zoom conference. So looking at how we are outreaching to individuals may be important to the concept of how we educate people about who we are. And I am definitely a newbie, but to educate people of who we are, what we represent, and our vision for the future. If they don't have that, then we're missing an opportunity. And this is a small window. I mean, for whatever you define this window is, it is definitely a window that we can let close or look at how we expand it and make something better and greater than what we have now. So that would be the consideration that I would like to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Thank you, Sandy. I have to say that I agree with everything that has been said in this very constructive brainstorming session. I especially want to thank my friend and colleague Barbara for her beautiful words of support for the downtown earlier. She has made similar statements in the past publicly. Barbara is one of those 4 votes in favor of the downtown recovery program at the Finance Committee meeting that I mentioned earlier in our meeting. So I can't thank you enough, Barbara, for your tremendous support of the downtown, especially for the struggling small mom and pop businesses that are hanging on to survive. I also agree completely with what you said most recently, Barbara, that we probably are asking too much of the businesses downtown to attend this Zoom meeting and that Zoom meeting. For example, in my personal one-on-one conversations with the businesses, either on the street, of course, wearing a mask, or by phone, text, email, I'm constantly mentioning upcoming Zoom meetings, be they with Captain Donahue or with the mayor, as is the case this Thursday at noon that I hope you all are aware of and can attend. I don't know if you're all on bid email lists or not, and even know about the Zoom meeting available to hear from the mayor directly this Thursday at noon. But anyway, it's one Zoom meeting after another that thanks to the good graces largely of DMI and the bid we've had since the riots, again, that started on May 30th, And I've been amazed, number one, by how many that say they don't receive emails telling them about these meetings because our email lists are imperfect, or there's just such a turnover in staff at these businesses, not necessarily that they're new businesses, but they just don't, for some reason, aren't receiving notice of these Zoom opportunities. But secondly, especially as you said, Barbara, it's asking us a lot of them to expect that they'll just drop all the repair and recovery that they have to do to their individual businesses to join a Zoom meeting here, there, or wherever. So I personally have tried reaching out to the businesses, going door to door to them after the riots began on May 30th and continuing to do so. And because of my longstanding relationship with so many of them, as I previously mentioned, even those that I have trouble communicating with because of my own language deficit, they know my contact information, they know me, they have my cell phone number, and so they call me, they text me. So I do feel that you know, we've been able to have that communication, but I'm only one person. I'm only, you know, one voice in City Hall, and so it has been a challenge, to say the least, to try to you know, speak with one voice from city government and trying to understand the needs of the businesses on the street, and then take those back to the right folks in City Hall. So I appreciate each and every one of you, and anything we can do in this forum as a downtown coordinating committee to help further the downtown recovery, both from the pandemic and the rioting. And I'll just say one more time and repeat what Greg has also said more than once tonight, that letter from those State Street businesses and property owners, and these are all small mom and pop businesses, they did not talk to the few national retailers or restaurants that are on the street, and this letter was developed, is a wonderful template, a blueprint for us as a DCC to go through that letter one by one with the appropriate city staff in our public meetings and discuss each of their requests. Certainly the top of their list is the police and receiving proper protection from the police, and their public safety concerns are overwhelming, and it's just awful. It's exhausting and tragic talking to these folks that are literally scared for their lives, scared for their employees to be working in the stores because of the violence that's taken place time and time again, the overall sense of lawlessness and wild, wild west in the area since May 30th. Admittedly, some of that is perception, but as I say, perception is reality. Another example would be mall maintenance. Obviously, they usually attend our meetings. There are specific asks of mall maintenance in that letter. I'm just talking about things that we can do as a city pretty easily. And then, of course, there are dreams in that letter that we don't have the legal authority under Wisconsin statute or even the Constitution to do in terms of property tax rebates and that sort of thing. But anyway, I just want to kind of close again, and thank you, Sandy. I know we need to adjourn within the next several minutes, but encourage that we do start meeting regularly now that we have the permission of the mayor's office and the powers that be to begin meeting and have the scarce resources of Madison City Channel to provide us technical assistance in these Zoom meetings, that we continue to meet early and often, and that again, we look to that letter, which I appreciate, Rebecca, very much you sent to this committee early in our meeting tonight, and really just we could go through that letter as an exercise among other things. There's also the previously mentioned letter from the certified public accountant that works a lot with people of color, businesses of color on the street, because she knows them all personally and well and is an accountant to them. There's that letter as well that some of you would, I think, probably would be interested in seeing. There's also the statement that BID and DMI have worked on that some of you probably haven't seen early on in all of this, civil unrest downtown. So there are other statements that are available that probably not all of us have seen that you could look at and that could help form our discussion at our next and future meetings. So I do really appreciate the great discussion tonight, and thank you all. And thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, Mike. And since you brought it up, we should talk about meeting again. And I'm not sure exactly how it works, but it seems I have to write a request to the mayor's office in order to have a meeting. And should we have it, if the committee wants it, should we do it at our regular time? We always used to meet on the third was it the third Thursday of the month?
Yes, the third Thursday, yes.
Yeah. Do we want to have it and then at the regular, we used to meet at 5:30. Should we do it at 5:30? Is there any discussion about that?
Tanya, can you help us unmute everybody for a quick little check-in?
Yep. Yes, although hitting mute all is going to do the opposite.
I will try to unmute people. Oh, there we go. There we go.
If it works for people, I think the 4 o'clock meeting at this particular time is very good.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I'm sorry, I can't make a 4 o'clock work regularly. I have a job that goes 8 to 5.
Sandy, you are still muted.
If I can just weigh in, if we're talking about the third Thursday of the month as a reminder, because you all see me breathlessly running into the MMB over the years or the CCB years ago, I do have a standing 4 o'clock Monona Terrace board meeting on the third Thursday of the month. So if the suggestion was 4 o'clock the third Thursday of the month, I couldn't participate.
Is there another day when you could participate at 4 o'clock, Michael?
Well, today worked, Ted. But if we're sticking with the third Thursday of the month, 5:30 is cutting it close for me as it is, and 6 o'clock is more reasonable going back to the third Thursday of the month. So I would have to say our long-standing 5:30 time on the third Thursday of the month is the best I can do.
What about polling everybody on the committee to see if a meeting in 4 weeks at this time on this day would be possible?
Yeah, because Tuesdays are also city council meetings. There's not one. They don't have them every week in the summer, correct?
There's an extra week this month of June.
Okay.
That's why this works so well for myself and my aldermanic colleagues, is this is one of the months with 5 weeks in it.
So I will put in a request, Sandy, for this to be a regular type 2 meeting, which means we don't have to have our tech support. We didn't know how many people might come tonight, or what kind of discussion there was going to be with all of the news. We just didn't know. Normally it would go to a type 2 meeting if we get approval from the mayor's office to do so, in which case then it's me running the meetings, going through a little bit of training, although I pretty much had that with Tanya running that for this meeting. So that would be the question about, and I can certainly put out a poll if that is what the committee would like to see. If there's any other dates besides the third Thursday that make sense for people, I could ask that. I know that Mike Alder Revere and Alder Harrington McCready and Alder Heck are, have lots of committees that they're on. So that's a tricky thing to find, but I'm happy to put out a poll if that's what the committee wishes.
Okay. Why don't you do that? We may end up with the same that we always had. And I think, remember, Adam, did you say you couldn't do it before 5 o'clock?
Right.
Okay. Well, we have to adjourn. So do I have an emotion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Okay. Anybody opposed? Okay. I want to thank the staff, Tanya, with tech support. It went very smoothly. It's a difficult technology, but I'm getting used to it. It's not bad, It's a lot better than just a phone call, I think. So thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And I will work with Tanya and IT staff in the mayor's office on seeing what we can do to become a type 2 meeting, which is when we can find times and all of that good stuff. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.